Welcome everybody. Today we are going to explore the fine art of making Wiener Schnitzel. And let us start by defining what that really means. Wiener is the word for a person from Vienna. Wien is what Vienna is called in German, and so people who live in Vienna, Austria, call themselves Wieners. And a schnitzel, of course, is a piece of meat that's pounded thin, it's breaded and fried and served in one of many ways. So what we're going to do today is a very classic Wiener Schnitzel, and we have a few things that we have to learn as we do this. The first is how to actually cut the meat, second is how to pound it, and third is how to bread it. And once we have that done, it'll chill in the fridge for just a few minutes. We'll have a little snack while we're waiting for that, and then it'll be time to fry it. And frying it itself is a bit of an art form as well. So what we'd like to do first is talk about some of the ingredients that we're going to use today. The first is the schnitzel itself is going to be made from pork. And even though the classic way to enjoy Wiener Schnitzel is with veal, the reality is that most actually use pork. It's much less expensive, much less controversial, much easier to work with. So we actually start with a pork loin that we will then cut and pound out. Then it's going to be floured in just regular unbleached white flour. It's going to be dipped in beaten eggs, and then finally we will bread it. And a combination of, you can use regular plain breadcrumbs, but we like to mix it with cornflake crumbs as well. So when do we get to work? Okay, first we start with the pork. This is the center cut portion of the pork loin. This weighs about 2 pounds. That's typically how you're going to find it in your supermarket. You may also find the pork's already sliced for you, pre-sliced, and that's fine if you want to do it that way, but it's much less expensive if you just cut it yourself, which we'll do in just a few minutes. Over here is the flour, and as I mentioned earlier, this is just simply unbleached white flour. We're going to beat 4 eggs with some water. A variation on this is you could use half a cup of milk instead if you wanted to, but water we find is just as well. The real $1 million question is, what do you do for your breadcrumbs? For breadcrumbs, we like to use 50% cornflake crumbs, which you see on your left, and 50% plain breadcrumbs, which you see on your right. And I have not mixed them together yet because we have a big decision to make. We could let them be plain, or we could season them with a little bit of paprika, or we'd season them with a little bit of our own alpine seasoning, which is a combination of herbs and a little bit of salt. And because it's going to be a classic Viennese Wiener Schnitzel, we are actually going to use a little bit of our own seasoning, which I'll put in right here. A little bit goes a long way, and mix it all together. And it's ready to go. So, lemons, fresh, slice them, the wedges go directly on the plate, and the essential part of that is it not only looks pretty, but you're going to squeeze that juice all over your schnitzel just before you eat it. Capers, these happen to be the smaller nonpareil capers. These are in brine. If you instead use them packed in salt, just be sure that you rinse them enough times that you can't taste the salt. Lingonberry, this happens to be made in Austria, and it's widely available here in the US. In a pinch, you certainly could use cranberry sauce if you wanted to, but the idea is that you not only want that bold, deep red color on your plate, but you really want that tartness that comes from the either the lingonberry or the cranberry. Okay, well, we're going to prepare the cutlets, and 3 key pieces of equipment will help you here. The first is you want a very sharp knife. We're using a chef's knife here. Sharp enough so it makes a very clean cut all the way through, and so you want the blade to be longer than the width of the meat rather than short, like using something like this. So the chef's knife helps. Secondly, a plastic bag, a Ziploc bag ideally. The reason for this is you're going to take your cutlets and put them in the bag, and when we pound them out, the cutlets are going to expand inside the bag, and because they're encased in the plastic, they're not going to splatter all over your kitchen, so it makes cleanup much easier, and it's also safer too. And the last piece of equipment is going to be a tenderizer, in this case one that is flat on the bottom. It weighs about 2 pounds, and the key thing with this is it takes practice. And you're going to see me do this. I'm not actually pounding. I'm actually going to let the weight and gravity do the work. And also, we're not pounding straight down. It's more in, as I like to describe it, think about an airplane coming in, touching down on the runway briefly, and then taking back off again. We're actually going to be doing something like this rather than straight down. So let's start with cutting the meat. And what we're going to do is prepare cutlets, but it's important that you squeeze the loin as you're cutting it. That way it's going to stay somewhat uniform in shape. So we're looking for about 1/4 inch, and I think our first one is always the most fun. There we go. So depending on everybody's appetite, a 2-pound loin will feed approximately 4 people. But again, that's in the eye of the beholder. Some schnitzels, I should say some schnitzel eaters, they'll eat 4 or 5 themselves. All right, so as we get started, just a couple of things to consider. First of all, it's a good idea to let one hand be the one that's going to get wet from touching the sliced pork. The other one should remain dry. That's not only for hygienic purposes, but also you want to be sure you've got a good grip on this tool here, because if your hands get slippery and that goes flying out of your hands, it's not going to be good. Okay, so let's start with this. I'm going to go into the bag. Couple things. First of all, you want to center it in the bag as best you can. It doesn't have to be perfect, but as best you can. Secondly, you want to be sure that it's in the center of your board. And third, make sure your fingers are not in the way, because if you hit your fingers with this, then you're going to be making schnitzels out of your own digits. Okay, so watch what we're going to do here. And then you can turn it as you go. Okay, now one way that you could see how well you're doing, how evenly you're hitting it, is you hold it up to the light, and it can be to natural light or it can be to a light bulb. And so I'm going to do just that so we can see where the thick spots are. Okay, so as you can see, we got lots of light coming through here, not so much in this corner or over here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just give a couple more shots on this and 1 or 2 over here, and we'll be done. Okay? Perfect. So let me pull it out of the bag, and just for fun, compare the one that I've just pounded with the one that we're going to do next. See the difference? Yeah. Pretty remarkable, huh? So we'll pound out the rest here. We'll save you the headache of listening to that. And as soon as we're done pounding, we will show you how that we bread them. Okay?
Okay, I think this is ready.
Yep, I agree. Looks beautiful. Good. Well, here are all the pork cutlets that have been pounded down into schnitzels. They're quite large in diameter, so it's going to cause us to make a bit of an adjustment, which I'll show you in a second. Here's the flour that they can get floured in, the egg that they'll be dipped in. Because they're so wide, we're actually going to swap out the plate for the breadcrumbs, and we're going to use this instead. Another good rule of thumb, if you can help it, is try to have one wet hand and one dry hand. And the objective here is to very lightly flour the schnitzels. So shake off the excess. So you're going to do the egg?
Yeah, I can do that.
You're doing the messy part, you know. So she's dipping in just a coat. And then when she's done, she's going to lift it out and let all the excess egg drip off.
And now, put down the breadcrumbs.
Now, very important that you don't press the breadcrumbs into it until the very end. You're just lightly coating it. A good schnitzel does not have thick breading on it. It should be very, very light. And while you could go directly into the frying pan right after these are made like this, it's really ideal if you chill them down. That'll help your breading to hang on to the meat a little bit better. I'm getting a little hungry.
Me too.
So while these schnitzels are chilling in the fridge and we're cleaning up here, why don't we make a little Austrian hors d'oeuvre to go with it, okay? While we wait for the schnitzel to chill.
Yeah. Zdrowie.
Prost. We've got a little hors d'oeuvre here that you'd find in many Austrian homes, restaurants, what have you. It's called Liptauer. It's a cheese spread, and we do make it here. It's my family's recipe, and the best way to serve it, we find, is on cucumber that's been sliced, or on some fresh rye bread, or if it's not so fresh, you can toast the rye bread, and it's great too. Agnieszka, try some.
Of course.
And in fact, that's this little product here was the beginning of Mount Salem Kitchen. We would make this to serve to our winery visitors, and consistently we would hear, you know, your wine's good, but this cheese is friggin' awesome. So after a while we started a food company, which has since become Mount Salem Kitchen, which is why you're joining us today. So if you'd like to learn more about this, just let us know. We'll be happy to provide some more information.
Very good.
You made it.
I know, Peter. Your schnitzel is very good. It's the best. But I want to show you my schnitzel, holy schnitzel,
Yeah, I can't wait.
how to make. So we see which one is the best. Okay.
We'll have a schnitzel war.
Competition.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, sounds good.
You're on. Well, we've got a couple more schnitzel recipes of our own that are very much Austrian. One we make with peppers and a paprika sauce, and there's also one called Wiener Schnitzel à la Holstein, which is a German version of it, used with a fried egg on top and a nice sauce. So there's a lot of things that we have yet to do. Yeah, if you'd like to see any of these, just leave us a comment. We'd be happy to gin something up just for you.
Yes, please.
Okay, we're about to go. I apologize for having the fan running in the background, but once you start frying, you want to be sure you've got good ventilation in your kitchen. Couple safety things before we get started. First of all, this is boiling hot oil. You should always be wearing long pants and closed-in shoes whenever you're cooking anything in oil like this. Also wear a full-length apron if you have one. That's just in case there's a splash or something that you've got some protection. Secondly, oil is flammable, and so if by chance the oil catches fire before, during, or after cooking, you want to be sure that you've got the proper lid to the pot nearby. And I don't mean in the cupboard or in the pantry, I mean within arm's length, because if you've got a fire in this, the best way to put it out is just cover it. It deprives it of oxygen and the fire stops. Never, ever, 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 ever put water on a grease or oil fire. It will burn down your house. So please bear those three things in mind. Next, the way that you know that your fire is hot enough and your oil is up to temperature, and we are on one of our larger burners here, we can look in and we can see there's waves forming in the oil, and that tells us that definitely the molecules are hot and they're moving around fast. This oil, by the way, we're using safflower oil. You could use other vegetable oils. I would not use olive oil just because it doesn't react well to the high heat. But this is just starting to smoke, which means it's time. One thing we do to just confirm that it's ready, you take a little bit of breading off and you put it in the pan, and if it sizzles, you're ready. I'd say we're ready. There we go. You can see they do submerge, and it just takes a second. Done. Now, you can eat schnitzel as soon as it's fried like this, which is what I think we're going to do today for lunch. You can also put them in the fridge, and you can eat them while they're chilled. They're great on a sandwich, or you can gently reheat them. You see how I'm laying them in? Very gently. I drop it in so the bottom is in the pan, and I layer it down. You don't want to just drop it, because that's going to cause the oil to go all over the place. You see you've got these buckles again, these waves. That's a sign of a beautiful schnitzel, but you do want to turn it over to make sure that they are cooked thoroughly. Okay, last one. It's a big one. Okay, so we're going to plate the schnitzels. Agnieszka, this one's for you.
Oh my gosh, beautiful. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Now, with parsleyed new red potatoes. And now, a little bit of cucumber salad. And next will be some capers. And you just let them go all over the place. So this is what a Wiener Schnitzel should look like. Okay, little restaurant trick just before service. Little shot of crushed coarse sea salt. And at the table, I strongly recommend you take your lemon wedge, pierce it, and drizzle it all over your schnitzel. And
Let's go try.
let's try, huh?
This is really wonderful, and you know, you just have it in the mouth.
Yeah, well, I'm looking forward to that schnitzel cook-off that we're going to do.
Okay.
If you've got any questions about what we did today, or how we did it, please don't hesitate to ask. And most importantly, we hope to see you again soon. Take care, guys. Please check out the description box below if you'd like the recipe.
Please like this video and subscribe our channel. Thank you so much, and see you next time.